Hello there, and welcome to Sweet Shot of Time. I'm your host, Steve Barnes, and today is a special episode. We're doing a live stream podcast today. It's already been recorded. We recorded this on February 19th. This is from Lindsey Dunn. She is the admin and moderator over at the Dark Ways 1899 Dark and Beyond Facebook group. I'll provide a link for that if you'd like to join it. She did a live stream there and allowed me to come and join it, and we watched Baron Bo Odar's 2010 film, The Silence, and we did a deep dive discussion of that, did a lot of research, and it's just a fun episode. We did edit it a little bit, so you're going to hear some editing here, but for the most part, this is the full conversation that we had, the full live stream. And if you want to watch this episode, you can do that on Lindsey's YouTube channel at one of my stories, and she's got the whole thing there. I'm going to provide you a link for that too. Don't you worry. We're on a bi-weekly schedule now. So after this episode and 2 more weeks, you're going to be hearing episode 100, a very special one coming up. So until then, enjoy this episode of The Silence with myself and Lindsey Dunn.
Hey, you are live.
No, you are live, Lindsey.
We are live. Hello. Do we know? Nobody's watching us right now, so that's fine.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah.
But we could have some people. Apparently, if they put comments in the chat, we can see them.
Oh, okay.
You know what I need to do is
get a comment section going, huh?
Yes. This is new for both Steve and I. We've never gone live before, and we've been planning this event. However, been struggling for the past couple of days as to how this would all happen. So I won't bore you with all the details of that. But if you're joining us, we have 3 viewers right now. So this is exciting. Okay, so what are we doing here? What is this that we are doing here? I think Steve and I are huge fans of the TV show Dark in 1899. Mm-hmm. And we have recapped. Well, we met because we were separately recapping the 1899 series.
Yes.
I slid into Steve's DMs, and because I was listening to his podcast, and I said I gave him some of my thoughts about a particular episode, and a partnership was formed, and we recapped Dark, and we are now in the Bo and Yantje fandom. Baron Bo Odar and Yantje Fries, they are a German duo that make these TV shows. And before they made these TV shows, they made some movies. And so we wanted to talk about one of those movies because we're waiting for their next series to come out.
I've been waiting for a year. Exactly a year. It's been since February of 2023.
Yeah, the rumors were that originally the rumors were that the next series was going to be called Till, Tyll. Mm-hmm. It was based on a book, I think, about a court jester. We don't know much about the plot of that. Then they kind of changed direction and said, no, our next series is going to be called Something is Killing the Children. Mm-hmm. And so, but there's no progress on that project. We don't know when it's coming out, when it might be coming out. Hey, my buddy Gerald stopped in to say hello. Thank you. That means a lot, Gerald, because Gerald's going to be getting ready for his own stream tonight of the Golden Peas, his movie award podcast. So very nice. I don't know what I'm doing here, but can I give, I can actually highlight Gerald's comment, I think, on the screen.
Okay.
I don't know if I did or not, but
I hope you have good luck with your Facebook live stream experience, Gerald. It can sometimes be daunting. I hope yours goes smoothly. And
he's an old hat. He's been doing it for a while. So
alrighty.
I was actually in his DMs today trying to ask him, how do you use this stream thing?
Well, thank you for checking in on her. That's great.
Yes. So we're waiting for their next series to come out. So we thought we would go back and look at the past, how they developed as artists, and So we want to see like their roots and where they came from. And then we also wanted to grow our community, our Dark Ways community. I helped moderate a Facebook, and Steve was recently promoted to admin as well. So
It was an act of necessity, is what it was. I seem to worm my way into a lot of places just with my charm. It happens.
and so those to me are the three reasons we're doing this. We're waiting for the next series. We want to go back. We want to fully appreciate them as artists and how they've developed and kind of see like where their roots are. And then we want to grow our community and begin to interact with those people more. Can you think of any other reasons you're doing this, Steve, that I didn't say?
Well, Lindsey asked me, so I said yes. I'm glad to, because I like doing stuff like this. I like to check out anybody I'm into's earliest work, like any kind of artist that I like. Usually their earliest work is like their most subversive, their most interesting. Not always, but in a lot of cases of some directors, I'm thinking of like in particular, like Richard Linklater and like Wes Anderson. Like I loved their like first couple of films they put out, and I kind of got the gist that, you know, these first couple of films they put out are the films that they've kind of like carried with them for a long time, and then we're finally able to get them out. And then, you know, they're challenged to write new stuff, and both of them have excelled. But like, I wanted to see what Bo and Yante's, that's how I always say their name. It's probably wrong, but I wanted to see the Dark Ways early days to see, you know, how that compares, because, you know, those two directors, Wes Anderson, like his first movie was Bottle Rocket. Arguably his best movie, my favorite movie. No, I have to get it back. Rushmore, which is his second movie. But Bottle Rocket was a fantastic movie, and I like all of his movies, but like Bottle Rocket just holds that special place. So I was kind of hoping that I would, like, you know, this movie would be like, oh my God, it's like it's the Bottle Rocket I never knew existed. That didn't happen, but you know, I'm glad that we were able to watch it and see their earlier work. And you can definitely see like Dark Ways, and you can see Baron in this work for sure.
Mm-hmm. And Yantia was the producer. Now,
Yes.
on Dark in 1899, she was the writer, but so she had a little bit of a more removed role, but she was the producer. So she was involved with this somehow. So the next thing I want to do is talk about just do a brief summary of the movie, because some people may not have watched it, or even if they have, it's just a little reminder. I'm not going to do a full summary, but just the basics of the story. So July 1986, Pia, an 11-year-old schoolgirl, is raped and murdered in a wheat field near a small provincial German town by one man, while another man watches silently from the passenger seat of his red car. The murderer packs Pia's body into the trunk of the car and leaves her bicycle behind. In 2009, exactly 23 years later, 13-year-old Seneca Wagum goes missing from the local fair. Her bicycle is discovered in the same spot where Pia's bike had been found. Senior Detective Christian Mittich, who investigated the original murder, has just retired. The new murder investigation is undertaken by David Yan, a detective who is still emotionally overwhelmed by the death of his wife 5 months earlier. Mittich takes an interest in the new case, but he is blocked from participating by the new senior detective, Matthias Grimmer, who insists on doing things his way, even when he is wrong.
Yes. We know guys like that.
So the movie covers, from there, the movie goes through the investigation of this new girl, Seneca. And we have this old detective that is no longer in the case, but he's retired, and he's involved because he's convinced pretty much from the beginning that the same murderer is responsible for both of these things, even though they haven't found a body yet. But he believes there's a connection because of all the elements. There's a wheat field, there's a bicycle, young girl, and it's exactly 23 years later. So he's convinced pretty early on that they're connected. Then we have the young detective who's coming in, and he's not doing well because of this the loss of his relationship with his wife, I believe. Yeah, she died. So he's still kind of mourning that. He's maybe
clearly still mourning. Yeah, you can see all kinds of signs of it every scene.
Yeah. Let's see. Who are some of the other key characters? We have the parents of Seneca.
Sure, I have them all written down somewhere here. I remember Yana, who was like his pregnant partner. I'll bring this up now. I was going to bring it up into the
partner of David Yan, the young detective. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, she's a police detective, and this movie was filmed in 2010. It was actually released in 2013 for whatever reason, but Fargo had already been on the horizon at that time. So some people wrongly thought that this was like a nod to Fargo, like having like a pregnant police officer, just like in the movie Fargo. As the case was, this actress really was pregnant, and when she auditioned for the role, she wasn't showing. When she got the role, she told Barron that she was pregnant, and they decided to write that into the script. So by the time they filmed, she was showing, and they decided to use that as part of the script, which I thought was a neat side note for her. Talking about interesting characters, because she was a funny character. Like there really wasn't like a lot of comic relief here, but she was kind of like a kind of light, airy person that you kind of I kind of gravitated towards, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So we have the pregnant partner. We have the parents of Seneca, which is where I started. What were their names?
Right. Carl and Ruth Wingham.
Right. And they are hoping that their daughter is just missing and not dead.
Yes.
And of course, the mother is played by our very own Charlotte from Dark.
Oh, that mother. Yes. I thought you meant Pia's mother, but yes, that's right. What is her real name? Caroline something or another?
Eichhorn. I think it's Caroline Eichhorn.
There you go. Yep.
But yeah, it was interesting to see her play a different role than the Charlotte role. We can get into more about that later, but as we're just going to cover briefly the characters here.
Oh, right. I spilled my guts talking about the pregnant person.
Well, you're gonna have a nice spot here. So we also had the two men who were mentioned at the beginning. These two men.
Yeah, the dudes.
Yeah, the dudes.
The boys.
And one of them is named Timo, and he's the voyeur, the one who's just watching and doesn't participate, but he's in the car. He's in the passenger seat of the car when the original rape happens in 1986. And what's the other dude's name?
Pierre
Summer.
I got the impression, like I didn't get the impression, like I read somewhere that Timu, they considered him a passive participant instead of an active participant. So he was a participant in it, but he didn't really do anything. He didn't do anything to stop it either. Mm-hmm. I'm not team Timu. I want to make that clear right now. He's like the worst. Well, he's one of the worst. There's two guys that are the worst in this movie, and I think we just talked about them.
Okay. We'll have to get into that more later. Okay, and then we have the you already kind of mentioned that there's the mother of Pia.
Alana.
What is her name?
Ilana.
Okay. And she has an interesting evolution. I mean, at first, one thing that was kind of odd about her, Steve, is when I first saw her on the screen, she's jogging, and I'm like, is she jogging in blue jeans? I don't understand. But I think she was just wearing blue jean colored track pants or something. But I thought Germany's weird. Mm-hmm. But she's got her trajectory in this is very interesting. She has obviously her daughter has died 23 years ago, and then here's this case being brought up, and people want to talk to her because of the possible connections.
Mm-hmm.
But if your child was killed in 23 years, you might prefer to kind of leave that past behind and not have that drug up again. But that she's not allowed. She's not given that option really, because people keep showing up at her house to talk to her about it.
She kind of plays an interesting role too, because she has kind of like an on again, off again like affair, like with the officer that was studying her case. So that's like a very interesting tidbit that's like thrown in there. That's it's a fun Baron Bo Odar type little like
Yes.
bomb to throw in there.
Yes, definitely. So were there any other characters that
Those are
we
the
haven't
main ones
mentioned
that I
yet?
wrote down. I mean, there's all the children, but I didn't write down the
Mhm.
children's name except for Pia and Seneca. Is that her name? Seneca? Something like
Yeah,
that. Okay.
Seneca.
That's a cool name, by the way. It's the first time I'm hearing that name, and I like it. I'm gonna
Yeah.
turn back time and name Charlotte Seneca.
Well, all the names are very, I don't know, all the names are very German and interesting. Even David Jan, Christian Mittich, Seneca, Pia. They always have, and Matthias Grimmer.
Oh yeah,
it's
Matthias is a
like
pretty badass name. Yeah. Sorry for cursing, but yeah, that's a cool name.
Okay, so let's talk about history. We're gonna do some history now, and I gave this task to Steve for him to look at
Mhm.
the production of this movie, and also just what was Bo and Yancha's
Mhm.
careers before the movie, even because they did a couple shorts. Like, how did
Mhm.
what happened before we met them as part of Dark? Well, up until this movie. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Baron Bo was born a small child in 19 I'm just kidding.
Wow.
um, I wanted to ask before I went into this, do we still have, I can't tell, do we have anybody watching or anybody with us here in chat?
There's one viewer. Viewer, if you want to tell us, where you're watching from. It could still be Gerald, loyal Gerald, hanging in with us, or it could be a brand new person. But
Well,
yeah, tell
whoever
us.
it is, this is for you. Okay. For you, viewer, I did this research.
For
Um,
me, I
no, for
want to
the
know.
viewers, just for the viewers. You should already know, you probably already know all this stuff I'm about to say, but I'll say it anyway. So Baron Bo Odar's first film was actually his final project from film school. It was called Under the Sun, or the German title Unter den Sun, which kind of sounds the same. That was 2006. And so that's when he graduated from the University of Television and Film of Munich. So this was his final project. It's about a coming of age story about a 12-year-old boy infatuated with his older niece. It's very dark ways, right from the get-go. Good job, Baron. This film, Under the Sun, hour-long film, was screened at the Monterey Film Festival and Utah's Slam Dance in 2007. And like I said, this was his final project to graduate. He was awarded the Studio Hamburg Newcomer Award and the Unique Feature Film Award, and was also nominated but did not win the Max Ophelis Prize. So, from winning these awards, I don't know. I read a bunch of interviews and I tried to figure out exactly how this was funded. All I could find out was how much the movie cost. It was a €2 million budget, which is, even with America, $2 million budget. He said that this project was his dream project to do a finely produced actual movie, which was shot in 2010, released in 2013. Baron wrote and directed this. He called the movie Das Last Schweigen, which means the last silence. This is an adaptation of a crime novel book that's just called Das Schweigen, The Silence, by John Costin Wagner. But Baron was like, there's already a movie from 1964 called The Silence. So I don't want to get that movie confused with mine. So I'm going to make my movie stand out by calling it The Last Silence. But the joke's on him because America did not fall for it. And the American title translated to The Silence. And there's like 5 films called The Silence. So nice try, Baron, but us Americans didn't stand for that. I thought that was so weird when I read that. And I bet he was so bummed out that happened. I'm sure he was. So yeah, he filmed this film, as I'm about to say, The Last Silence, deliberately in the hot summer because the book took place in the wintertime. He wanted his actors to be sweaty and uncomfortable. So that's why he chose to film it in the summertime. He and his, what do you call him? ADs, assistant director, had like a movie marathon and watched a bunch of Western movies before they filmed this because they wanted to give it the look of like a Western or the vibe of a Western. And he cited a specific Korean film in multiple interviews where he said this Korean film called The Memories of Murder is like the film that he most influenced him to make this film. So that's, a little bit of his history. So he filmed it in rural Germany because he didn't want any local color, either southern or northern Germany, to like have any part of this film. He wanted this film to be like a standalone, like a Western. He didn't want it to be contemporary. So that's why he filmed it in Brandenburg, Thuringia, and Bavaria. I've never heard of two of those places. I hope I said them right. But that's why he shot in these places. We already talked about Jana. She was, I'll tell Harry Martin here, since you're just tuning in. The actress who played Jana, the pregnant police officer, she actually was pregnant for this role. She was 6 months pregnant during most of this shoot. So it's not just a nod to Fargo. It's real life here. And the actor who played Kristen Middich, the older dude that was having an affair with Pia's mom, the older cop. We know who he is. Mm-hmm. A majority or all of his storyline was cut from the theatrical release. So if you went and saw this in theaters back in 2013, you didn't see any of that stuff with him. So they wrote him out of the plot. I don't know why, maybe time, but I bet he was bummed out about that. Mm-hmm. Were you getting ready to say something, Lindsey?
No, I wasn't. I was wondering why he got written out of the show.
He got canceled. I don't know.
Yeah, it might be canceled.
You mentioned Yante was production manager of this movie. It's true. She had previously worked as a producer for a production company called Made in Munich Film. She also graduated from the University of Television and Film Munich. It's my headcanon that's where they met. Meet cute in college, in front of the dorms. I don't know. But after this film, they really started working together because the next film they did was Who Am I? And Yante was the screenwriter of that movie. So he gave her some credits then. I'm going to wrap this up.
We're not going past this movie.
No. So I wanted to quote a couple of quotes from these interviews that I read. This is some interesting stuff. And then I'll be done. Sorry, Harry, I'm taking a long time.
Harrison. It's my buddy Harrison. But yes, I wanted to say hi to him.
Well, it says Harry J. Martin right there. I shouldn't say his whole name. I just doxed him. So this is what Barron said. He said, the 80s are my childhood. I associate it with an insanely positive attitude to life. Economically, everything was great. Everyone is doing well, but behind the facade, not quite so much. In general, I love contrasts and extreme gradients. You see a cornfield in the summer evening sun, but a heinous crime is taking place. Or I start a scene with a laugh that ends horribly, such as an overweight naked man going for a swim, but then he discovers a corpse. I'm a symmetry fanatic, and a great role model of mine is Stanley Kubrick, who puts everything in the middle. So does Wes Anderson. Remember I was talking about him. Harrison doesn't remember because he wasn't here then. The last thing I want to say is he says he didn't want to go into he being Baron, didn't want to go into military service. Like many Germans, I avoided war so I wouldn't get into that kind of extreme situation. Instead, I decided to work in a clinic that treated epileptics. I ended up seeing a lot of people dying in front of me instead, which is just as traumatic. So I don't know. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's my research I did for you, Lindsey. I'll take questions from the audience.
Yeah, no, that's great. So it's interesting that they, filmed this in the hot sun. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
really notice. I guess I didn't notice a lot of sweating on camera. I mean, I know that the woman running in her blue jeans seemed hot, but
I was thinking that exact thing when you said that. I was like, that sounds very impractical, especially knowing that it was summertime. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I know David Johns is always like unbuttoning his shirt and like looking all cool and stuff, though.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's very unruly all the time. His hair's always messed up, but I assume that was
Absolutely.
a product of his mourning,
Well,
his
yeah, it could
grieving.
be.
But yeah, that's those quotes are interesting too because yeah,
Hmm.
I just sometimes wonder about I worry about Baron Bod. I worry about his state of being. Like, why does he want to? I mean, yes, we all. I mean, I like horror. I'm drawn to bleak things. We both, have that in common. But this, I'm gonna hold my thoughts about the content of this movie till we get to that section. But it was a difficult watch, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, overall thoughts about the movie itself without going too deep. Um yeah, what was, you know, put aside the fact that this is by directors we love.
Yes.
By creatives that we love. What are your thoughts about this movie and yeah.
Right. So I did watch this, for this particular event.
Mhm.
And I made my wife Heather watch it with me too, as I usually do. I didn't make her, but I was like, we're gonna watch this movie. And
Mhm.
she was down with it for about 30 or 45 minutes. Um I couldn't disagree with her when she was like, this movie is kind of boring. There's nothing catching me. There's no hook. I'm not seeing anything that's like drawing me in. The intro was bleak. These are some things that I agreed with her about. And I do think that on first watch, um, like I got to the end of the movie. Like I said, I'm watching it for the purpose of checking out,
Mhm.
Baron and for this stream. And because of this stream, I wanted to watch it again. And I gotta say that the second viewing, it was very enjoyable. I liked it a lot more. But I don't think that really fares well if you're not compelled to watch it a second time. Because I would not have watched it a second time if it wasn't for this stream. So I might have walked away saying that movie was kind of boring. I saw a couple things that were kind of darkish in it, but didn't really grab me. I mean, just being totally honest. I think there were things about it that are great that I'm going to talk about, but just like my general overall enjoyment experience, like watching it the first time through, it was just mediocre. It wasn't bad by any means, not bad,
Mhm.
just not compelling. So
Yeah.
did you have any of those thoughts too, or was I alone there?
Well, yeah, I mean, I resonate with some of what you're saying. I felt in some ways, I felt like this is more uncomfortable for me to watch this movie than it is to watch Dark, even though there were there's very dark parts to that, but they're balanced out. We're going to talk about comparisons later on. So again, I'll save some of that meat for later, but it was it was not just dark. Harry mentioned Harrison. Sorry, why am I saying Harry now?
It's just
Um, and,
very
he, yes, it is dark, but most of their material is dark. But this it was almost unrelenting in the attention it gave certain elements of the plot and certain characters that aren't present in Dark. For all of its bleakness, there's no truly evil characters in Dark. They're all hurting people that are very misguided and misled.
yeah, sure, I agree with that.
Maybe more like this David Yan character.
Hmm.
Uh he's he's flawed, but he's not a bad person. He's just a little all over the place, and people are like, I don't know if I want this guy in my kid's case.
Right. Sure.
But yes, it wasn't overall, it wasn't as entertaining as it could have been. You can tell that this was early in their development as artists, and yet there are seeds of greatness in there. And so,
yes,
one of our topics is going to be about the filmmaking techniques that were used, and were there any that maybe even weren't used in Dark, but they were used here. And I have some things to say there that I noticed that were done well. And so there were these glimpses of genius already, and we can see like the way that those grew and became better in their work. But it was still compelling enough. I've seen worse. I've seen a lot worse movies.
Yes.
That are laughably bad. This was at least, it was almost like an episode of, SVU, of Law and Order SVU, except more time spent from the criminal's perspective. So I love Law and Order SVU. So was it like, is it a movie that I would rate very highly? Probably not. But it was still, I was glad I watched it. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I am too. I think there's like three particular, well, we'll talk about favorite characters later. I'm not going to talk about my favorite characters right now, but that helped the experience, like finding like some characters that you enjoy. So like if I was watching a scene that I wasn't particularly enjoying, a Temu scene or something, then I would know that, oh, hey, what's his name's back? David's back. Yay. Because I kind of like David. I like, I can't say anybody I like. Spoilers for later.
Well, that's our next place we're going to go, Steve. So let's just go in there. Well, actually, there isn't a question. I don't know if we have a question here. Who your favorite characters? I asked which characters you find the most compelling. But before we talk about that, I want to know who you think is the main character of this movie. Is there a main character, or is it what they call an ensemble cast, where everybody's kind of sharing equally in the? We're not going to talk about Madam Web on here, Harrison. It's not going to happen. Stop trying to make Madam Web happen.
What is that? I don't even want to know. I'm going to talk about the main character.
Yes.
I have two opinions. My Steve, have fun, let's make this movie fun opinion is David is the main character, the cop, the tall, dark, handsome cop. In my mind, he was the main character. But in actuality, I gotta say, I believe that Temu is the main character and the main like focus. I have a specific reason for that, which I think is tied in with what we're going to be talking about later. So I'll save that. I know. I love to drop these like billboard, these little, what am I going to say later? It's going to be so crazy. But I have a specific order of my notes, and I'm not trying to get ahead of myself. Is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. I mean, before you get too much further with discussion, I say every time you say Temu, I think of the cheap shopping place.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Let's try for Timo. Timo. We're not shopping.
You were nodding your head a lot when I said Temu is the main character. So what do you think? Who are you thinking is the
No, Harrison says he agrees that it's about Timo, but I'm surprised if Harrison's watched this movie. Maybe he's just reading a Wikipedia summary.
He just likes me. He wants to agree with me.
Yes. So he was on the camera the most of the show. It's in his perspective, and you can the cop. David Yan. He's an interesting character. I almost thought, well, this is meant to be an ensemble cast, because there's so many characters that have a little bit of time. Nobody's really on there that often, not even Timo, because it leaves his perspective so often. And I think the reason for that is maybe Baron knows, oh, you'd be a step too far to make this guy the main character, who's sort of also a a main villain. So, but I think he's the one who we spend the most time kind of watching him go through stuff. David Yan, to an extent, a little bit. There's that weird scene where he tries to touch his pregnant partner's belly while she's sleeping. That's just, that's a weird part that I don't know. We may or may not talk about that, but what that was all about.
You just did.
Well, I mean, we're not going to detail it, but
yes.
Yeah. So I think for me, he's the main character, Timo, sadly. But yeah, but I don't. But see, like my issue is I don't agree that he's terrible.
Okay.
Yeah, we empathize with him, and I have mixed feelings about that.
So you are Team Temu. I knew it. I'm like Team David. You're Team Temu. I see how this is. But no, I guess I can see what you're saying. Like like you said, he's a passive participant. I don't think that exonerates him one bit.
No, it does not exonerate him. But I feel like well, this is a spoiler full discussion, everybody. So yeah. we're gonna talk about stuff. We're gonna talk. This event is technically for our Facebook group, who may or may not any of them be here. Maybe they'll watch it later. But we asked them to watch the movie before they got onto the live stream. But what was I'm like losing my.
We're talking about Temu and like how we don't want to exonerate him and say he's okay. You were kind of defending him a little bit. This is where this started.
Yes,
saying he wasn't that terrible.
Remember. Well, he Well, what I was gonna say is that almost you might use the word grooming to describe his relationship with Pierre. Pierre approaches him on the bench at the park. It's not the very first scene is when we see just the two of them in the car. They go out in the wheat field, and Pierre attacks this girl on the bicycle. Then later we see a flashback of them. Pierre is now, it's 23 years later. He's now become a family man. He's got a wife. He's got 2 kids. And he's so he's moved beyond this situation. But they show this flashback of him being at this apartment building, and he's sitting down at the kids. He's watching them play, and Pierre sees him and kind of says, "Oh, I recognize something in that. I guess that facial expression or the way." And so then he invites him to watch movies in his apartment.
Right.
And that led to the scene of the girl on the bicycle and Pia getting attacked. So it's almost like Pierre is trying to groom Timo to be like him.
Did you catch the significance of the movie that they were watching, that they kept going back to with like the long hair, brown haired girl? Did you catch the significance of that? If you haven't, I'll tell you now.
Yeah, tell me now.
First off, I wanted to say that was like the worst movie meet cute in history when Pierre and Temu meet, like while they're watching little kids in bathing suits. Like they should, unless you have a kid yourself, that's off limits. You don't sit there and watch kids playing in their bathing suits unless you have a child yourself or you're watching one of them. It's incredibly creepy, guys. But yeah, they go up to the apartment, and the DVD that he shows him is of a girl that Pierre had kidnapped and molested on film and then killed on film. So like they were watching that act happen, and they refer to it like in this movie. They talk about this other girl that disappeared, like in 1982 or 1983 or something like that. And that's the girl in the film that they're watching. So Timu knew what he was getting into. He knew that Pierre would do this kind of thing. So like him,
Mhm.
when we see that first scene, and we're like initially thinking like, why isn't that guy doing anything? What is happening here? Why is he just sitting there? Well, we know now why. Like Pierre brought him along as like a passive observer to watch him at work or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that girl, the brown haired girl, was like the police kept referring to another missing girl case, and that was the one they kept talking about. I think her name was Eva or something like that, or Eve maybe.
Okay. I must have totally missed that one. Let's say fond farewell to Harrison, who's leaving and said we're doing great. So thank you, Harrison.
Thank you, Harrison. Our
We're
audience
glad
is
you
leaving
stopped
us
by.
now.
We still have 2 people.
All right, thank you.
So yeah. Oh, well, I thank you for explaining that, because that went over my head. I just assumed these were just porn movies that he was showing him randomly. I didn't realize this was a girl. So he's kind of, yeah, he's kind of like, okay, so far you've watched kids on the swing set and that's all. Let me show you these movies. The next step is we're gonna you can watch while I do this to
Mhm.
this girl. And maybe the next step would be, okay, well, now we're gonna do this together, or we'll be partners.
Sure. Yeah, that never happened.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
okay, which does
So
not
yeah.
exonerate him.
Yes, it does not exonerate him, but yet you wonder. I guess the thing is, you wonder if what's his face, if Pierre had not come along,
Mm.
would this have
Mm.
would this where would Timo be? Like, yes, later on we see he still has porn on his computer, but
Mhm. Sure, sure.
was that there before he interacted with Pierre, or
He was
was
sitting there
that,
looking at kids. I think that's a big indicator, is that he's interested. It's
yeah.
kinda like if you like, you're kinda like me, you're a little teenage kid, not now, but when I was a teenage kid and I wanted to get into punk rock, the first thing you do is like you show up at the club and like, "Ooh, what am I doing here?" That's pretty much what Timu was doing, I guess, like getting, that was his thing, was to watch. I don't know. But you're right. He grew up to become like a parent. And like, I think the first time we meet him, he's like being like a great dad, having fun with his kid. And then like, as soon as like he remembers everything and he sees the story, that's all over. It's like he's immediately back. Um, so there were about 10 to 15 years here where, Timu, he was looking at stuff on his computer. We got
He
to
was
be
still looking at
honest.
stuff on his computer.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm not exonerating him, but
Oh, I know
I
you're
did,
not.
yeah, did
I'm just trying
wonder.
to
Yeah.
I'm just trying to my point I was leading to was like, "Oh, he's been a good guy for a while now because he's got a family." That's not really true,
Mhm.
Steve. I'm lying to
But
myself
they did
because
keep making a thing out of, the camera would often, different times in the movie, cut to his son. Like, obviously he really loved his son. So
Mhm,
anytime he would even think about doing that, he might look at his son or think about his son and go like,
sure.
okay, like, no, I can't do this because this is not what decent people do. And his son maybe became an anchor to him. And he had not just like a great wife, but she was a really fun wife. I mean, she's
Yeah.
jumping in the swimming pool in her dress,
Yep.
playing with the kids, had no, she wasn't like this uptight wife who's, never showing affection. You can tell she's probably a very fun, affectionate wife.
Yeah.
So, the story does mention that they, when he moved away, they pretty much got married right away. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
He did a Alexander Tiedemann on her. Like,
yeah.
he moved in from town, changed his name to her name, which is also
Mhm.
I saw, is like, is that a theme, like,
Oh,
with Bear and
yeah.
Bo, likes to, like, have men take the wives' names. That's
Yes.
he's a very progressive dude, I guess. But, yeah, I noticed that immediately too. It made me think about Alexander Tiedemann.
Okay. So, okay, we've talked about the main characters, and we spent a lot of time going through Timo's whether and how bad he really is. So, which characters did you, besides these main characters, were there any other characters you found really compelling the way they were portrayed?
Yeah, I get to go first. Yay. Um, I liked David a lot. I thought he was an interesting character, and I kind of gravitated towards him. Um, Visually, he reminded me of like an old friend of mine, like a guy, Chris. He looked exact. I mean, it was like identical. Like the faces are exactly the profile, everything. So I gravitated towards him for that reason. And his partner, Jana. I didn't catch the actress's name, but the character's name was Jana Glazer, who was pregnant. And she was always really funny. And they used like the pregnancy as kind of like a joke. Like he bails on her at one point, like, and leaves her and is like, get a bus, take the bus, woman. And I don't know. I thought she was really cool. And like, she really, I don't know. I was really holding my breath a lot towards the end. Do I want to talk about that scene now? Can I talk about that scene now with Jana? Can I do that? Am I allowed to?
Sure.
It's unlimited here and on StreamYard. Um, I thought that was a really interesting, like, because you remember I said like the pregnant cop could represent the Fargo cop. The silence, this reminded me of Silence of the Lamb, where you have like all the cops are out there, like, we got the guy, it's Timu. And then the one lone woman police officer just on some random search, just like Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lamb, shows up at the actual killer's house and like is in actual direct danger while she's talking to the actual killer. And she's completely unknown. Well, of course, in Silence of the Lambs, it ends differently. But here, she walks out the door and she she eventually scratches his name off the list, even though she thought he was sus. But I thought that was a neat, like, I don't know, Silence of the Lambs parallel that I wonder if it was deliberate or not. So I
Mm-hmm.
liked her. And then I also liked Pia's mom, who was like the short-haired woman, the
Mm-hmm.
jogger in the jeans. Anybody who jogs in jeans, I know is like a free spirit. So I thought she was a fun character too. Like she was kind of wise and kind of said cool stuff to Middick. Is that his name? Sometimes she would say like interesting things to him. I can't remember any of her lines, but
Mm-hmm.
she was just a real direct person that I kind of liked too.
Mm-hmm.
So who were your
Yeah.
people?
Yeah, that was the mother, Pia's mother. I hate to.
Okay,
What is her name? You have it on your sheet.
I
Did you?
do. Alana.
Alana. Yeah. For me, she was uh she was a you could see in her sort of the seeds of maybe a Hannah
Mm-hmm. I thought so too.
character.
Yeah.
That here's this mom who's living on her own. She ends up having an affair with a cop. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yes.
um
I thought that too.
but you can tell she's she's the one, they keep showing up at her door and she has to deal with people digging up her past.
Mm-hmm.
She starts to have this affair with the retired cop,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, well, was this happening before, or is this new because he showed up and they're kind of working together?
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, just and how she just says, no, I think this is over.
Yeah, I love that too. Just like just like frank directness, and like it just like blew his sails too, because he was like so happy, like he was like bouncing off the walls, like woohoo, everything's great now,
Well, he
right?
was trying to plan a fun getaway for them, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And
Heart was in the right place, but head was not. You know.
yeah, he was so Christian, is that his name?
Chris,
Christian Mittig. Yeah, he was so happy that the case had been solved.
yes,
This had been hanging on him for 23 years. He
yes,
felt like case
yes.
closed. Finally, I can put this, and he was ready to just kind of put it behind him and move forward. And maybe she genuinely liked him, but she could just tell they were in completely different places because he was happy, giddy, this is great. And she's like, hey, my daughter is still dead. and you're not.
Yeah, and the killer was just found, so I'm kind of thinking about that right now.
Yeah, the killer was just found. But there was also this question. I don't know if it involved her. There was that whole question about, was there just one person or two? Maybe she and Christian weren't involved with that aspect of it
They
at
weren't.
all.
No, they weren't. That was just a
Mhm.
David thing at the end.
Yeah. So the killer was found, but not only that, but the body was found.
Mm-hmm.
The body was found of this new girl, and so that probably put her right back into the place of remembering what it was like for her when her daughter's body was found.
Right.
Yeah. So she wasn't happy. She wasn't all
Yeah.
like him.
They were just like in completely different places at that moment. And he just shouldn't have shown up that day. That's all there is to it.
Mhm.
He should have waited a couple days and came in tiptoeing instead
Yeah.
of dancing like he was.
I wanted to be interested in Seneca's parents because, the mom was Charlotte. But I guess one of the tropes I hate so much in these missing children movies is when the parents, for no reason at all,
Mm-hmm.
seem to blame each other. The guy wasn't really doing that. The dad wasn't really doing that, but it was almost like she blamed him because their child was missing.
Mm-hmm.
And they say in real life when that happens and your child goes missing, like sometimes most marriages do not survive that.
Sure.
And so it is a true thing that happens, but it also feels like it's a big movie trope where the parents turn against each other because they need somebody to blame or somebody to be mad at. But that it just seems so random that the mom was holding it so much over his head, the father's head,
Mm-hmm.
as if it was his fault. Um, yeah, I guess in a way they were like, "Oh, you didn't listen to her that day," or maybe if we had been
Yes.
yeah, if we had been better parents, she wouldn't have left and ran away from home that day. So it's
Exactly. All
our
that
fault.
blame. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I gotta say though, their story, like they had like a wrap up to their story though, because you got a sense that they were they were touching each other. They had some sort of togetherness at the end there, correct?
Well, she did come back.
Mm-hmm.
She came back home, but I can't remember, did something happen
There
after
was
that?
it was nothing, but it was just like they hugged or something, or like he touched her arm. It was just a very slight indication that, that they were going to try to work through this.
Mhm.
Um, Maybe in spite of what you were saying, like how a lot of couples can't survive that because she's Charlotte Doppler. She can survive that. We know she can.
Yeah, but I think other than that, I mean, they made the real bad guy, which is the main bad guy, the baddest of the bad guys, Pierre. They made him very cardboard as a villain, but I mean that's okay. You don't How much nuance do you want in your rapist? I don't know. Uh but
He
yeah, so I think to me he wasn't that interesting. Even like,
No.
okay, you're gonna grab what, a paring knife to dispose of this woman?
I really did not want to see that knife go into her belly. I'm so glad it didn't happen because I was like cringing. I didn't like it. Like I said before, that's the not cringe moment. Because I was like watching that scene, like, yikes, I don't want to see this. And it didn't
Mhm.
happen. It's all good. He fooled me though. Did he fool you? That's what I want to know because he fooled me. In the middle of the movie, Timu goes to him and Pierre's like, "Oh, hey, what's up, buddy?" And Timu's like, this thing. And he was like, "Oh no, what? Hell no, that wasn't me. Shit." And he fooled me. Did not fool Heather because before Heather was out, she was like, "Yeah, that guy did it. So let me know who did it at the end." And so like the next morning, I was like, "Yeah, you were right. It was that guy." Um, did he fool you or did you not fall for it?
So you're saying that you believed him when he said, "I didn't kill her
Mm-hmm. Talking about
this
the
time."
girl in 2010. Yes. I
Mhm.
believed him. Yes.
I could have gone either way. I was like, yes, he could have done it, but it could also be a copycat, and you know, yeah. I don't know what I thought. I mean, I definitely was like, I think he did it, but then he kept saying he didn't do it.
Yeah, so like a sucker, I believed him. Like he's a good actor. I mean, because he said that, and I was like, okay, he's ruled out. So who is it? My main suspect was Middich. I was thinking Middich did it.
Mm,
Turns out that's not right. But I mean, in my opinion, Barron succeeded with that little thing there of like throwing you off his scent, because it worked for me, not for Heather. Heather was immediately like, she was like, he's just lying. That's all there is to it. Um, Whatever.
mhm.
I bow. She's right. I'm wrong. He fooled me. I feel bad that like that jerk fooled me. I don't trust anybody anymore.
Yeah. So, did any of the actors strike you as like somebody that would have done well in the Dark
Oh
universe?
yeah. Heck yeah. Well, two in particular, Timu and David. I think both of them would have done great. I mean, I because Timu could have easily played Noah, and David could have easily played like maybe like an Ulrich character or something, or maybe an adult Michael. Um, yeah,
Uh-huh.
I could definitely see them like in dark roles.
Yeah. It just
One,
made me wonder why, why they didn't cast any of these people again. I mean, we
sure,
haven't seen Who Am I yet, so maybe some of them will show up in Who
they
Am I,
do. There's
but
four of them, four dark people in Who Am I?
I mean people from this movie. People
Oh,
from
oh.
The Silence.
Now that we know the Dark Ways people, that's right. We can start spotting them. There's Pia. Oh my God, that's her. Uh, who was it? There was let's see. That led me down a thought path, and I think I just lost it. I did. What were we talking about, Lindsay? That can get me back on the path to say my interesting point.
Yeah, we were talking about characters that might have been able to play characters in Dark.
Yes. And then I have a third one that I'm gonna say before I let you say some. That young blonde-haired cop that looked a lot like Noah. He could have played Noah. I mean, he looked just like him. I almost thought it was Noah. But then I was like, oh, there's no way, because he would have aged. But
Mm.
it was like Noah's cousin or something.
No,
You know
it's
who I'm
good.
like, young Noah, teenage Noah.
He wasn't on, he might have been okay, but he wasn't on screen enough to convince me. This couldn't have been his casting call. But yeah, no, it was the same ones. Really more Timo for me than anybody. David was okay. He did well with what he had, but I felt like I kept thinking for whatever reason Timo reminded me of Peter.
Oh
He
yeah,
almost
sure.
looked
Okay.
like Peter. Maybe he wouldn't have
I
played
can
the
see that.
Peter role, but you know, in fact, I think he would have been good at the Peter role. He had that sort of tortured isolation
Yeah.
feeling that Peter does. So I just thought this guy's a really good actor. Like he really had a lot of his facial expressions, really
Mm-hmm.
communicated. I really felt like I could understand what he was feeling at any given moment. So he just kind of rose above the rest of the cast to me. David was okay. I think he was also an interesting character with but they didn't do enough to make it clear what, he was obviously upset and grieving, but how did that impact the enthusiasm he gave the case? It it wasn't they didn't do enough to connect the dots for me to why this case meant so much to him when his issue was that he was grieving his wife. And again, like, why are you touching this woman, your partner's belly, pregnant belly? He was just doing things that did not make sense at all to me. So it wasn't clear exactly what his deal was.
Okay. Yeah, maybe they describe that more in the book, and maybe they just kind of use the book as like a pastiche for that, and then just kind of didn't make up for it in any sort of way. Because he has top billing. This guy who plays David John has top billing. So I guess he's like like the main actor or like the most popular actor of this whole lot. But yeah, maybe they didn't spend enough time on his character to like really refine it the way they did with like Timu or some others. I guess I can't disagree with you. I didn't have the same thoughts, but I can't disagree. I'll tell you that. And thinking about it a little further, just as for another aside, Yana, the cop partner, could have played Katarina as well. She would have been a good Katarina.
Oh, and that's your favorite character. I mean, you really want to replace her?
No, I don't want to, but like in a parallel world, which we're familiar with here, she played Katarina.
Yeah, she was actually in that scene when she's with Pierre and they're together. She did well with that material. The material itself wasn't that great, but she did well with it. And really, like you said, they were mostly using her as kind of the humor to poke fun of the fact that it's like, I mean, to me, that was David's main problem. I'm like, why is he making this pregnant woman walk and take the bus? You're not being an empathetic person. All right. Filmmaking techniques. What were some of the camera angles and the lighting choices that you noticed they used in this film? And at this point, we can go ahead and start, talking about how some of those that might have been used in dark versus not.
Okay. Man, I got, again, like I told you, Lindsey, I took so many notes. I'm an avid note taker. So I have a lot to say here. So please don't let me keep rambling. First shot of the scene was so dark. The first shot of the movie, because it had like those doors and like there was like a divide between the doors and you see like two parallels. And I felt like I was immediately going to be watching dark because the first thing we saw was a parallel scene. Then almost the next thing we see is like an overhead shot of like Forest Road and like the forest. And like, I was like, I'm watching dark here. This is what's happening. Because he used those exact same, I don't know if they're crane shots. I think he mentioned that they're helicopter shots that he took. Whichever he's using, those are great. I mean, that's the best like transition scenes. I love those transition scenes when they show like an overhead view of stuff, which they do in dark all the time, and they'll show like the year and stuff there. I just think that's a great signature that he seems to have. There's no opening credits to this movie. It just starts on that door that we learn later is like Pierre's apartment, but there's zero opening credits to like tell you who the cast is or what the movie's called or anything. Just run right into it, which I thought was very unusual because that's like usually like, especially like first time directors on their first big thing will like do something wild for their opening credits or do something unusual or unique or something. They'll do something.
Not the European ones. European
is that
directors
common?
Tend to be different about that. Yeah.
Okay. I'm an American boy, so I'm used to our American directors like Quentin Tarantino doing wild intros and stuff. But yeah, no intro here. But yeah, I said a couple. I'm gonna defer to you now, Lindsey. What are you noticing in this?
I noticed the overhead shots too. However, they are used in dark, but sparingly. And there were a lot in this movie. Yes, a lot of overhead shots. I wonder if that was like Bo's favorite shot and he's learned to like pull back a little bit, like use it more sparingly to make it more special. But yes, the transitions in the woods and the trees. The sound design is really good, yet it's very different from the sound design that Dark has.
Sure.
We know that, I mean, I'm sure you looked this up, but Ben Frost did not do the music in this, but yet it had a sort of similar, there were sound effects. There was this muffled sound design they kept using.
That's right.
One real notable sequence that I enjoyed that I thought, man, I wish they would have done more in dark, but dark is dark and don't want to compare too much or say, well, they should have done this in dark too. But in the scene when the mother like there's the girl, Seneca. She's at the fair, the phone, the police. They're cutting back and forth between the different characters as this is going on, which really heightens the tension. But the sound design in that moment was really notable as well. That, Dark didn't really do the one main suspense scene we knew about in Dark is when Jonas is, running with his hands down at his sides to
Yes.
to get the golden snitch and to grab Marta. So that is the most suspense we get in a Dark show. I mean, they build suspense in other ways where they're just like using the creepy music, but this was, I guess, they're almost what you would call like montage shots where you're you're intersecting between these different people, and it just builds this tension. I really liked that moment, and I thought this is good filmmaking right here. And they did that a couple times when these notable moments happened, that because we have our sort of ensemble cast, so the movie wants to find out where everybody is at that moment. That becomes so key. So yeah, that's a couple I'll mention. That was at least 4 to your 2. So I'm going to toss it back over to you, Steve.
All right. Okay. The whole concept of having the crime scene like in the same spot as it happened earlier. I mean, this is by no means a time travel thing. And there was a specific reason that Pierre did it in the exact same spot. But Barron expanded on that concept with Dark, where like a lot of these things happen in the same spot over multiple periods of time. So that's one of my little things I wrote down that's like similar to Dark. The fact that he does stuff in the 80s, that he did like a scene in the 80s, is very dark and very barren. And he talked about that in the interview that I read with him, why he does stuff in the 80s. The girl on the bike riding down Forest Road was so Martha, so dark. And then the fact that she had like a red jacket. No, not her. The 2010 girl, I forgot her name. Seneca. She she like had this like red sweatshirt on the back of her bike, and then it's like that. And for me, being friends with you, and like you're introducing the concept of me about color theory and Dark, and maybe look at that red sweatshirt, associate it with the red car. Like she's getting ready to go on some not so great adventure. Like it spoke very, very dark to me. And then more dark, the green hooded mystery figure. About 30 minutes in, I was like, is that the stranger coming to scoop up some body or something? Or maybe it's Helge? I don't know. But yeah, I was like, he must love that jacket. He loves that green hooded jacket. Maybe it's Baron's jacket.
Yeah, I think we already talked about the overhead shots, but not the fact that there's this wheat field. That makes me think about more 1899 even than Dark. That there's that wheat field from that is from the past of Crester and Tove. That reminded me of that part. So one of the things that was different that I really liked was they had the girl was at this Seneca was at this carnival. They did a little bit, they did there's great set pieces in Dark. The school and the Sigmundus and Eric Lux, the different layers and the different sets. And I'm losing my Dark memories already. What is the scientist's name?
Tannhaus?
Tannhaus. Yeah, Tannhaus is, his shop.
Okay.
But this was the whole fair carnival reminded me of more like Stephen King-ish or 1980s, the vintage retro sort of creepy position. And they have there's a shot where she's in front of this creepy clown. So that was very different to me, and I in a good way. It's like, oh, this isn't the kind of thing that we saw them do in Dark later, but it was a reference. You kind of got it, what they were doing and why they might have done something like that.
I noticed that shot too and thought it was an unusual shot that we had never seen in Dark before, because like the kind of cinematography or like the filter or on the camera that he used when he had that clown, because that clown came up a couple of times when I was looking at still images of the movie. That's like a popular still image of the movie, is that clown as well. So I don't know. I guess he loved that shot for this movie, but he never like went back to it again. He never, it didn't incorporate in the Dark too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just some of the lighting, the way they would sit in the room, when
Sure.
When Timo goes to Pia's mother's house and she's feeding him pie and they're just sitting, and it happens again when Yana is sitting with Pierre in his apartment. They kind of do this thing where they're sitting around a coffee table with a couple chairs, and it's got the kind of IKEA furniture look.
Okay.
Very simplistic and minimalist, but that
okay.
that just made me smile too, having them sit there and drinking tea. We're going to drink tea, or we're going to eat this pie, and it seems like it's all congenial, but there's all this tension under the surface.
Sure. Yeah, that ties in with what he was saying in his interviews too. And he was striving to go for like a rural Germany and not like the city. So I think that's kind of part of that vibe too. Like, oh, I don't know you, but yeah, sure, want to come in and talk. It's like that kind of vibe exists like in rural Virginia, maybe rural North Carolina as well, where that's a normal thing. Whereas if you go to like a city where people are used to kind of keeping to themselves, that'd be kind of like a weird thing. Like, you want to come in? It's like, no, I'm just, I'm just here to drop something off. Bye. So yeah, that is kind of interesting. Maybe that's how it was for Baron growing up in the 80s in Germany. Maybe that's the kind of the vibe that he's trying to go back to.
Mm-hmm. And the shot you mentioned about the doors, I thought that reminds me of Katerina saying, like, it could be anyone in this town. Behind that door is my son.
Oh,
that these creepy things are happening in the middle of daylight, when in the place you least expect it. This happy apartment complex. This man is their caretaker. He's the one that oils the swing set. Isn't he a nice young man?
Yeah, he fixed somebody's TV just because he felt like it and didn't charge them. What a great guy, Pierre.
Yeah. But yes, the colors. There was, there's the red car, but there was a couple of yellows. But yeah, it wasn't too strong. That hadn't been really fostered completely yet.
Got a couple of themes that kind of came through, which is like the tragic cop, like working through his grief. That kind of reminded me a little bit of like Egon or Ulrich, those type dudes. And then like towards the end, what did I write here? David's talking to Alana about everlasting grief. They have like a discussion towards the end, because he asks like Alana, like, does it ever get better? Does it ever go away? And she's like, no, it doesn't. You just live with it. And yeah, we see the possibility that's going to like continue like to torture him for the rest of his life, because the last scene we see of him is like him rummaging through papers and he's like, I hate it. So we know he's going to be tortured for a long time, which is like a Dark character. He should move into Winden. He'd fit right in.
Yeah, the evidence room I thought looked kind of familiar.
Oh, you think it might have been the same one?
Yes, the shot when he's sitting there with the headphones on, listening to the recordings and going, and there's the metal shelves with all of the files in them, and they're walking through. I was like, I'm expecting to see Ulrich making out with some person in one of these aisles. So
he'd be making out with Jana, of course. Like, she'd be pregnant, he wouldn't care.
I think I mentioned before this, I felt like this movie was uncomfortable for me. And I think that gets one of the key differences. So Dark is about, trauma. It's about terrible things happening, people surviving terrible things and bringing that into them, maybe not healing from them, and then going on with their life, but yet carrying around this wound. But for me, there are, these terrible things that happen, but they're sort of filled in with the emotional. The dominant story in Dark isn't about kids getting kidnapped. I mean, that's the trigger of these events happening, is these kids get kidnapped and people are trying to erase that wound of that happening by going back in the past and trying to change things. But there's all of these, you see these people that are feeling these different things, and so our main attention is put on the people that we care about, and we want to see them be able to heal and get better. Whereas this movie starts with this secret and this murder, and we're just put in the gaze of this Timo character the whole time, and also the fact that the man Pierre is just getting away with these horrible crimes and not anybody be doing anything about it. And then there's the fallout of this that we're seeing. So it was just bleak. It was bleak, but not without the focus, as much of a focus, or it wasn't as done as well, of the emotions. There was glimpses of that. They tried to bring that in through David Yan. They tried to bring that in with Christian Middick and how he's upset that he hasn't solved this case, and that's kind of hanging over his head. There's this marriage drama going on between Charlotte Doppler, Seneca's parents. But those themes, those characters, they aren't brought to front as much.
That's right.
They're kind of in the background. And I feel like with Dark, they developed those things more and didn't ask us to be in the mind of this. He's a criminal. I mean, he's a accessory to a crime. He watched it happen. He helped put the body to rest. Oh, yeah. So he's a guilty party, and he didn't.
Yes.
So, but it's just too much in their perspective for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta hear that. I guess this is a movie too, so like we don't get like the 36 hours that we got with Dark. So we have less time to get to learn these characters. And I wonder about this book. I wonder if this book is like written from like Timu's point of view the whole time. I don't know.
There was a movie, because there was one movie in the past, and I think it starred Kevin Bacon. Let me see if I can find it really quick. There was a movie that came out that I think starred Kevin Bacon, and he plays a pedophile that is in recovery. Anyway, I just haven't seen a movie like that in a while. I don't remember the name of the movie, but he's trying to, move past that, and he gets a girlfriend. She wants them to move in together, and he's like, that's not a good idea. And she's like, I think it's a great idea. So he has this potential of a life, but we're like, so it's almost asking you to feel sorry for this person. Feel sorry for pedophiles in a way.
I didn't get that vibe personally.
Well, I mean, this is kind of moving to our question here that I asked later, but we can go ahead and talk about it now. Maybe is it the thing is, they do this thing with like, this pedophile was lonely, so he did this crime to get his friend to come back. to send a signal to his friend that
Okay. Okay.
come back and watch movies with me. Come back and molest kids with me. I miss you, buddy.
I mean, I got the vibe that he was like desperate and that he was lonely. I didn't mind him being lonely so much. I guess I didn't. Yeah, my mind just kind of did not go in that direction of empathizing with them or really asking why, really necessarily. I guess because like that first scene left a lasting impression on me. And I was like, okay, I don't really need to emphasize with these guys. Sure, okay, he's a good dad, but I know what's up with this guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know I was kind of surprised by that question, honestly, because I didn't feel any empathy whatsoever.
Well, I mean, I haven't, we're going to talk about some reviews. That's what I saw a lot in reviews, people who rated the movie poorly because they felt like it was too much in the perspective of a pedophile. And that's like, that's not what I don't want that. If it's a movie about a pedophile, make the pedophile a side character. I don't want to be in his perspective for the as much of the movie as this was. And so that wasn't something I made up. It was something I saw other people say. And then it made me think, okay, is that why I felt so uncomfortable watching this movie? So I'm not 100% saying, I'm just asking the question, is it like asking us to empathize with pedophiles, or is it just like, hey, there's people like this out there, but why make one of them so innocent? We're not exonerating him, but yet it kind of makes him out to be a victim, almost like he's crying and commits suicide because he just can't take this guilt of what he's done, and he's so ashamed of it. So of course, because he's a human being, we're like, this is a tortured soul. We recognize that. So yeah, those are just some thoughts. I mean, I'm not saying it does ask us to empathize. It's just a question, Steve.
Thoughts are good.
Yeah.
Thoughts are not bad. I think from like the first scene of the movie to the last scene of the movie, we're seeing like that door that's just like an innocuous door, just anybody who's a random apartment door, and we know who's living behind there. So I kind of think that that's where this movie's coming from. It's like, danger and evil can lurk anywhere in any smiling face behind any door. So that's what I took from Pierre. Now from Timu, I saw him as a different character. And a question that I kind of posed to you, just hypothetically, was like, who do you think is the more evil of the two? Because I thought Timu was just as bad. I didn't think the fact that he actually didn't do anything didn't exonerate him. I think it just kind of made him more of a follower, more cowardly, maybe worse in that respect. Because he does have he pretends to lead a normal life, where, Pierre doesn't really pretend to lead a normal life. He pretends to be a normal guy, but he doesn't pretend to be like a family man and like have children. He's not like out there like babysitting or anything. He's just a guy that lives by himself. I've seen 100 of those guys in my neighborhood. I'm suspicious of them all now. But then there's even more guys out there that have a wife and kids and are living a life. And like, it's just, I think that's like kind of like the point I got from this movie is like evil can lurk in either way. Like just because Timu didn't do anything and seems fine, we learn later on that, he's been like looking at these movies all along and into it. So I don't know, that was kind of my where I came from. That's where I thought Timu was like, maybe he's supposed to be like some kind of like a balancing wheel we're supposed to put against Pierre,
I would say for me, like, Pierre is definitely the worst of the two, because he doesn't feel any remorse, doesn't seem to feel any remorse for his crimes, but
Yeah.
at least Timo does.
That's true.
again.
But
It's
despite
like,
the remorse, he continues doing it. So it's like, who's worse?
he's well, yeah. I mean, he's watching the movies. But I mean, perhaps, does he kill himself because he wants to make sure he doesn't feel tempted to do anything like Pierre does one day? Like, he's worried that he will. But he, that there's the scene when he's in the swing set, right? Well, he's on the swing set several times, but there's the one where he comes back and the little boy comes to sit next to him and he says, like, he's like, hey, let's have a contest to see who can swing the highest. And Timo looks kind of amused, and eventually he decides to do it. But his mind is somewhere else. But he's not thinking, you could tell he's not thinking, I wish I could molest this kid. Like, that is not where his mind is at all.
Right. That's true.
Maybe it's because he's more into the young girls. I don't know. But it's not like it's not on his mind all the time. I want to do things to kids. Like,
right.
That's not where his mind was. He was more upset about because at that moment I feel like that was right before he went over to Pia's mother's house he wanted to maybe go talk to her, and he ends up going to her house to, like, I guess he really wants to check in on her and be able to tell her he's sorry. So he keeps asking questions about her daughter until she tells him that my daughter is dead, so he can say, I'm sorry, so that he can tell her I'm sorry, even though, he's not turn himself in. He's not that sorry.
Okay. But he is sorry enough to go apologize to the person that he directly affected and then go off himself. So, okay, I see what you're saying there. I didn't make that connection, honestly. I've just kind of watched the trail of events. But, that bringing that back around, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And the way he did, like, the thing, he pulled up to, like, the water in his car, and I'm like, oh, no, he's going to do it. And he puts it in reverse and starts driving off. I'm like, oh, he didn't do it. It's like, oh, he did it. I like that. I like that fake out, that that little moment of fake out. Cause I was like, oh, he's not going to do it. He's fine.
Yeah. I was wondering, I didn't remember. Well, I don't think the Wikipedia even said, cause I read the Wikipedia, as I was just preparing for this, but, I didn't remember how he killed himself. And so I was like, is he going to drown himself? Because that's a really difficult way to kill yourself. It's like, you got to hold your nose, so he ends up, driving off the bridge later. But I was like, he's going to kill himself now. No, he's going home. Nope, he's driving off the bridge.
It was a real sport moment there. It's like, oh my God, he's going for it. The underwater scene was pretty cool. I bet that was hard to film. But that was a neat shot that I bet they had a lot of fun filming. I didn't see anything about that. I was hoping I could read some stuff about that or see something. Nothing. But the shot itself was neat.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, did you want to, you had, we have a couple more questions, but you had mentioned you had more connections to Dark. Do you just want to read, do you want to read through your list?
I think we already touched on all of them. The only things we haven't touched on was the cop Jana. Of course, there's a character named Jana in Dark. Pierre's real name is Ulrich, so that's interesting that Ulrich, we all love him.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are the only two. Everything else, Charlotte Doppler, we already mentioned that. The colors, the girl on the bike, the cornfield, the 80s, the overhead shots, the door, the opposites. I mean, there's a lot of them. There's really nothing. There's really no wham bam I'm going to hit you with right now that's going to blow your mind. So that's pretty much all of them.
The cop that never solved the case. We already kind of talked about that.
Right. Anybody in the chat get anything that we didn't? Come on now. I haven't seen any chatting since Harrison left.
Yeah, we've got one person watching. I don't know who it is.
Hello.
But hello, person. Could be my mother.
I know, my mom.
Okay, so let's talk about the title. The question you had asked the question, why is the movie called The Silence?
Do
Yeah,
I
good
get to answer
question.
that?
Yeah, I want to hear your answer.
Okay, I cheated. This is the actual answer.
What? You found Bo's answer online?
Well, yes. Because I already had like my own idea of what the answer was. My idea of what the silence was the silence between Timu and Pier. Like we never really saw them talking a whole lot. But like there was evil stuff that was happening between them. So I kind of thought like their vibe was the silence. Before I tell you what Baron says the silence is, well, what is your opinion of the silence?
Well, at first I was like, okay, but is it the last silence? But since she said that he only did that because he wanted to add a word,
That's right. That's right.
maybe it doesn't count. I
It
don't know.
doesn't count.
I feel like there was a moment in the movie where, and it might have been when he drives off the bridge or when he's about to drive off the bridge, where like when he's in the water and everything goes silent, or there's a moment during the movie when everything went silent. And so I was thinking about that, kind of the moment before you make this choice. Or maybe because another thought I had was that because Timo said nothing about, he didn't confess this crime to anybody or tell anybody about this, that he knows who this murderer was. Like in his silence, he's complicit in that's his crime, is his silence. So the silence. So those were a couple of ideas I had.
Well, that last one was exactly what Baron said. The silence is Timu. The silence is Timu cannot talk about what he's done. And he watches what Pier does in silence, lives his life in silence, and at the end of the movie, he ends his silence by killing himself. So that you're exactly right. That's what Baron said. Is the silence refers to Timu in his particular silence.
Maybe the person is Baron Bo-Odar because I invited him to our event.
Oh yeah, it's got to be him. Yeah, I called his agent earlier too and was like, make sure to get him on the horn.
Of course, did I share the old event like 12 events ago?
Darn it.
No.
Baron's over there. Like, where's Lindsey?
Okay. So we kind of talked about this already, but feelings while watching the movie. I told you I felt uncomfortable and gross and like, don't want to think about this. How did you feel about it, Steve? And how did you feel about the ending? Because we can talk about that next.
Okay, yeah. I felt uncomfortable and gross. Ooh, too, as well. I mean, that's the vibe. Yeah, uncomfort. Yeah, like I said, there was really nothing that like really drew me in. There's like no focal point that's like, really captivating me. So yeah, it wasn't kind of an uncomfortable watch. That was what Baron's intention. That's why he wanted to film it in the heat, was not just was also to make his characters uncomfortable. But he said that he intentionally made the scenes with two people being still talking to each other. There's very few scenes where action is happening. There's like a girl riding a bike at some point, etc. But the meat of the story is just two people talking to each other, not moving. And that was deliberate as well. So I think he wanted us to kind of feel that way. Just kind of stifled and uncomfortable.
For sure.
Let's see. I got one more thing I wanted to say about Timu.
Did you say that? How did you feel about the ending? Oh, okay.
Are we on a delay? You got me?
I heard you say you have one more thing you want to say about Timo.
Okay, yeah. When he was hanging out with his family at the pool and he does like the fake phone call thing so he can like go back in the house and like pretend he got a phone call so he can get away from the family and go do something else. That was so stupid.
Mhm.
Like there was no reason to do that. All he had to do was just get up and go, but he had to like make some phony excuse to do it. I thought that was like, it was funny, but it was also like his character is like a conniving kind of guy that like can't do anything of his own free will. He's got to have some motive. So, but I thought that was a very funny moment. It made me chuckle.
Mhm.
The ending of this thing. Let's see. Um,
Let's say what it is first.
huh? What?
I said maybe we should say what the ending is first.
Yeah, you were asking me what I thought about the ending, so I was going to tell you that.
Yeah.
May I? Hmm?
Yes, you can. But I was just like, for our viewers, our one viewer, maybe we should say what the ending is before we say
Oh,
how we felt about it.
sure. Yeah. Do you have that, or should I wrap that up?
I can briefly do it. So after the guy commits suicide, Timo kills himself, drives off the bridge, and later on, his buddy Pierre finds out in a newspaper article and from the woman that lives in his apartment complex that's always
Yep.
after him to oil the swing. They're talking about the fact that that this man, killed himself, drove off the bridge, who was a child murderer, and supposedly the person that did this case, these killings, and Pierre just walks home and he's contemplating the loss of his friend, apparently. So
Hmm.
it's very open-ended, not much of a resolution, especially because we'd love to see Pierre come to some justice, but it's clear that
Hmm.
that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. Oh, and they show like, oh, here's where the red car is that we've been looking for,
Yeah.
which was kind of the missing piece, is that uh, he was driving around in this woman's car.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's also the thread of David, who figures out the fact that there is another
Yeah.
perpetrator, and everybody just ignores him. He ends up like attacking his officer, so he gets suspended. So of course that doesn't help the case. And then Jana like crosses Pierre's name off the list, so Pierre's gotten away with it. So the
Hmm.
last scene you see is like the Pierre's door. So I thought that was kind of cool. Like it was a creepy, cool ending where it's like, yeah, this guy completely got away with it because of the police officer's actions, and Timu like not giving him up. He's free to do whatever he wants to do. Um, I don't like that for Pierre, but he's a fictional character. So like it's kind of like a neat ending to the story. And I don't know. I thought the ending was okay. I liked that Timu ended his silence, and the fact that his silence is ended now. I don't know. I didn't feel bad about the ending. I wouldn't say it was like a completely rewarding ending, but it definitely had an ending. I mean, I can say that. I've seen movies
Hmm.
that have zero ending. And this one definitely, all the characters had some kind of moment to show you that, what's going to happen with the rest of their lives, some sort of indication. So I was okay with that.
Hmm. I mean, it was an interesting ending. It was, but it wasn't very satisfying.
Hmm.
I think people make an issue about the fact that the ending of Dark is, in some ways, it's not a perfect ending. It's not like a happy ending, happily ever after ending, because
Right.
so many of our characters disappear, but yet the dinner table ending is so satisfying in a
Hmm.
way, in its own way, because we
Yeah.
get to see kind of resolution that there are some characters that are still existing, the ones that were not in the loop. And then, of course, there's this hint that maybe there could be a little baby Jonas coming into the world after all, that his
Hmm.
traces just couldn't be erased. So it's very intriguing and kind of, yeah. So this ending, I felt, had a lot of those similar components, except for I really don't like the fact that it kind of, yeah, it makes this thing about Pierre looking at this newspaper article and he's kind of like, you could tell his affectation is kind of, yeah, that's too bad. I mean, this guy's just completely getting away with everything, and his tortured friend that he sort of drug into this, not unwillingly, but still he definitely put on the pressure to keep him in that thing, is that, you know, he killed himself. And yes, there's an ending to his story, his silence, one way or another, but again, it's like, it's not the ending I would have liked for him either. So it's intriguing, but not necessarily satisfying. We, like you said, we do know where everybody is. You know, and David Yan just getting ignored. Now, it did seem like Yana still liked him a lot because she's giving him a hug. You know, maybe she liked the fact that he punched his boss. Who knows? So maybe it's the beginning of their real love story. Who knows? But it was an interesting.
I hope not. I think she has a husband.
You do?
Right? Doesn't she? I mean,
Why?
we never. I don't know.
Just because she's pregnant?
Traditional. Doesn't she have a husband? I don't know. I didn't get the impression.
Little, you sweet child.
I just didn't get the impression that she was single for whatever reason. I don't know why. That's just the vibe that I got. It's a vibe, Lindsey. And no, I live off vibes.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I got the feeling that, of course, maybe if he was into her, he wouldn't make her walk so much. But I thought that was
obviously.
I thought that was sort of hinted at it, that he was touching her belly. I thought he was sort of, yeah.
I took that as different. I took that as like part of his grieving process, how he's never been able to grieve. And he's like, there's life inside of her belly, and inside me is nothing. So, and here's a chance that I can actually like maybe feel that life while she's sleeping. It's creepy, sure, but I don't think it was like anything beyond just being a lonely creep that was not trying to do anything other than there's life in there. Wow. That's what I took from it.
Well, that's very sweet, Steve.
I told you I'm a fool. I'm easily fooled.
Okay, let's talk about some reviews of the movie. So I asked you to come up with some critic reviews for us.
Sure.
What'd you find?
Oh, there's some good stuff. Let's see. The Guardian did a review of this. Peter Bradshaw, favorable review. This icy, gripping police procedural thriller is easy to recommend for fans of The Killing, and indeed for anyone else too. And I believe that is like one of the pull quotes, because I saw somebody complaining like, they said that if I liked The Killing, I'd like this movie, and I didn't like this movie. So I believe that this was one of the pull quotes. Washington Post. This is one of the lukewarm reviews. It says, this is film noir at its noiriest. I thought that was funny, so I had to bring it up. The Frankfurt Book Fair Festival Award. He won that award. These are the awards that this movie has won. The Special Jury Award at the Beume Film Festival 2011. Best Adaptation Award at the Frankfurt Book Fair 2010. And this is what they said about it: an extremely disturbing and compact film version, which with great subtlety interrelates the stories of perpetrators and victims. Okay. Not too thought-provoking, but they also won the Audience Award for the German Thriller Award. It was nominated for the German Films Critic Award, nominated for the European Prix Award in 2011. Variety's top 10 directors to watch, and we've watched them. Here's a couple of bad reviews I saw. There was only one-star review, which I was shocked by. And this person said, it's really boring. 3 exclamation points. This story could be more interesting, but it's so very slow and boring. I just wasted my time. That's what Jirjirac89 said. Then we got a 2-star review here from George Dyson, and he's a little more succinct with his words. Not succinct. He's a little more verbose with his words. It's the exact opposite. And this is kind of what me and Heather were saying. This parallels with us. George says this movie was so slow paced that I struggled to stay awake and then finally succumbed to sleep. After waking up and replaying it, I fell asleep again. The direction of this movie is poor, with all sorts of arty shots that could have well been edited out. Far too arty and far too boring. A murder film needs to be faster paced with actual developments occurring. Oh, here we go. It says on the DVD that if I like the killing, I would like this. Nothing could have been further from the truth. Do not waste your time with this disaster. George Dyson. So did you waste your time with this disaster, Lindsey?
Well, I assigned myself to find some letterbox reviews, which
Okay.
are
I was
always very
IMDb.
fun.
I was IMDb. So
Okay, yeah, it's great. So this is a really good review. The letterbox community votes out of 5 stars. This is a 4.5 star review, and it says that The Silence is a quite outstanding film that manages to be several things at once while excelling at all of them. In fact, the only thing is struggles with throughout is regards to Sebastian Blomberg's grieving detective. I think this was David Yon. Sebastian Blomberg is his name, who has only just returned to work after the death of his wife several months previously. That has nothing to do with Blomberg's performance here, which is very good, more the rather stereotypically tortured cop treatment of his character. Even so, I can see why such a character is here and why he's given such an arc. The Silence is perhaps less about the murder of 2 girls and more about tortured souls and the different ways in which they try to deal with their torment. Blomberg would be a considerably less interesting and appropriate central character, perhaps, if he was just another cop. It's a real double-edged sword of a character. That extra edge makes his investigations all the more believable, yet at the same time, the character is a flawed one. And this is a very long review. So
it fits in with our long live stream.
Yeah, it's quite rare for, I'm going to skip part of it. It's quite rare for a film such as this to have so many integral characters and yet manage to not only keep them visible for long enough so that they don't become superfluous, but actually make them important parts of the story. There are at least 10 main characters in The Silence, and yet it could barely afford to lose any of them. While it's busy keeping us guessing with its central mystery, it's also telling stories of depths of grief, loneliness, and the effects of these crimes on just about everyone. And they think it's interesting. They started with the antagonists, and that, yeah, so that's a very, very favorable review. Then we have, I'm trying to find a bad review here. Sort by lowest.
Yeah, I found a lot more like mid to high reviews than I did bad reviews of this movie. Most of the reviews were somewhere like in the 5 to 7 range, I found on IMDb. Between 1 and 10, that is.
Okay, 1.5 stars by Presto Bix. I was tempted to rate this as decent, but upon reflection, I just don't see the point of the film. It's certainly not fun, and it's essentially never thrilling. It takes itself seriously, too seriously, in fact. But if it's going to be a serious film, then it has to expect us to engage with it seriously. And it's just not going to hold up to any scrutiny. The plotting is just obviously nothing special and even a bit muddled in the first half as you figure out these characters. But I could understand putting that on the back burner if you wanted to give focus to characterization. However, they mostly skip that entirely. These people are skin-deep caricatures of whatever negative trauma they are feeling, whether it be grief or remorse. It's meant to be unflinching, but the film doesn't prove itself as a serious one. Let's all take a drink every time they say serious. It doesn't prove itself as a serious one by depicting troubling events without looking away. It proves itself as serious by exposing the emotions these events stir up with the incisive nuance. Okay, I said the word serious far too many times in this review. I should buy
Even they realize it.
Okay, so let me find a middling one. Lots of dead time in here, but But
Not
I was
really.
busy trying to figure out StreamYard, yo.
We've been silent for like no more than like 4 or 5 seconds at a time. We're doing perfect. Harrison said we did a great job. I believe him. Oh, is this being recorded by any
Harrison,
chance? Are we going to be able to get a recording of this or no?
I think so. I think we are. I'm counting on it that we're going to get to be able to do that. Okay. All right, here's somebody that seems kind of knowledgeable here. 3 stars. Okay, this should be good.
Okay.
By Luke Gayhaunt.
Okay.
Based on the German crime fiction novel the same name. See what I did there? He mentioned the book. Based on the German crime fiction novel of the same name by Jan Kosten Wagner, his sophomore effort. This hits extraordinarily hard as the picture begins with the crime as it occurs in 1986, and then fast forwards to 20 years later, actually 23, Luke, but where the raw anguish is still present to all the people who were involved. The mother of the victim who hasn't moved on, the detective who failed to solve the crime, and in this instance, one of the witnesses of the event who failed to act appropriately. Oh, he calls him a witness. I guess that's fair. It's this blunt reality that we witness in a copycat crime on the anniversary where another young girl goes missing. There's also a newer detective who gets shuffled into the investigation, who's grieving his own loss, which adds to this. Both his strange behaviors, which appear to spook the others, and the maneuvers he takes to get to the truth of the case. It's a disturbing and spellbinding look at a criminal mind and the actions that law enforcement takes to solve the case. In a certain respect, I see this mirroring some of the best aspects of George Slusser's 1988 film, The Vanishing. This is a solid thriller that is well worth seeking out. Edit. I would also easily see adding this to the roster of LTBX's most overlooked films of the 21st century, as this has clearly fallen between the cracks. So even though that's a 3 out of 5 star review, it sounds pretty complimentary.
Yeah, it does. And maybe they save their 4s and 5s for like the out of the park stuff, you know?
Yeah. So it was interesting that I would have liked to find more variety. I didn't the 1 star review I found needs some help with expressing him or herself better. But I don't, because there's many things you could say are flawed about this movie, but just that about how the seriousness, yeah. So, yeah, but it's interesting to see how people regarded this, and it's not, nobody really, except for that 1 star person, nobody really says that. Oh, well, in the boring review, there were some other 1 star reviews. Sometimes people don't like slow things they deem as slow.
Right.
Not a lot of stuff happening.
Especially like in our fast-paced society now, you know? We get the TikToks.
Yeah. So, did you have any other topics you wanted to cover about this movie, Steve? Because I think that kind of wraps it up for me.
It does. We're at the 2-hour mark, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the number 23 because Baron loves to talk about 33 and loves to talk about numerology within dark. So I just thought I'd look at what 23 might represent. It's the atomic number of vanadium. I don't know what that is. This is interesting. The normal human sex cell has 23 chromosomes. That could have something to do with something. The Earth's axis is tilted at 23 degrees. In biblical numerology, it's associated with Psalm 23 or Psalm 23, you might want to say, also known as the Shepherd Psalm. The Quran, Muhammad lived to be 23 years old. So, nothing really standing out here, but I just had to look up that number because I was like, why didn't they choose 33 like dark? Maybe there's a reason they chose 23 is because of Jim Carrey. Is the number 23 that movie? Remember that one? That was not very good. I don't know, but I just thought I'd check it out anyway.
Well, here's an interesting thought, Steve.
Okay.
So the movie is set during 1986, right? That's where it starts, 1986. And this movie came out in, I think you said originally it was 2010.
Most of the awards are 2011 awards.
Right, but don't fact check me, Steve. I mean, I'm saying that the actual
2010, yes.
the published release date on IMDb is 2010.
Correct.
And so it's 20 in the movie, it's 2009. So the movie came out, or the movie is set 1 year before it was coming out, right? So follow along with me here.
I am.
Okay, so 23. So then it's 23 years later. So they wanted to set it during this year, or like, it's now, right? Okay. So then Dark is 33 years, and we know there's a lot of 33 significances in actuality in the 33 and a half year cycle, or 33 and a third year cycle or something. But it came out in the movie, when the series begins, it's 2019, but the show comes out in 2018. So what I'm saying to you,
I'm catching it,
as I feel like the common denominator here is 1986. They must really love that year, and so they want whatever they're making to be like it's now. So the movie is set like a year off from maybe, but so I think that's 23. And when Dark came out, it was basically 10 years after this movie.
Yeah.
And it's 33. So I think 1986 is what they love.
Yeah, that would make sense. He was born in 1978. And that would make him like pre-adolescence then. So he that's what he says in that interview too. Like the 80s were a time of like innocence to him, even though there was all this crazy stuff happening. Like he was completely free and innocent. I guess he was 8 years old at that time. 86 was a great year for me. I was older. I was 14. But I mean, heck yes, it's a great year to do stuff. And I mean, a great year to like set movies. And it's it helps too with technology. If you want to set a movie, cell phones are going to ruin your movie. So you got to set it back in the 80s. So that's kind of like a common trope that people do, is like set the movie back in the 80s, because then it erases those problems of social media and phones in our culture.
Yeah. That my explanation probably took a long time to get for me to get to what my point was. But
no,
yes,
I mean,
my friend, and I have a friend, Chris, that says like he's 2 years younger than me, 2 years older than me. He says 1986 is the greatest year of all time. Like to him, that was like, he remembers that being peak life is 1986. And I think a lot of the best, some of like you mentioned, a lot of the best movies, the movies that we like value and think were awesome, came out in 1986. So I don't know I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was a great year for movies. So I think that's why they picked it. It wasn't 23. And if why did they pick 33? Because it was 33 years after 1986. So
and you can like reverse engineer your reasons. Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah.
So maybe when Something is Killing the Children comes out in 2030, it'll be 43 years later. Will be the significant.
Jesus. Don't say that.
I always throw those things in there just to upset you, Steve, just to get a slight rise out of you.
I am upset. You did it. What are we going to podcast next? I don't know, because they won't tell us.
Okay, well, I think we're done here. We're gonna wrap this up. This is probably a little long for a live, especially for our first live. But this is what happens when Steve and I get on the mic together. We have to go 2 hours. It just somehow happens that way. But Steve, like, you have the potential to seize a brand new audience here. So, do you want to tell people how they can find you?
Oh, definitely. If you're here on Facebook, look up Steve Barnes. That's me. For real. My band is Introvoid. I have a social media presence, mostly on Instagram and Spotify. You can find me on Facebook, but not really. So Introvoid is the band, and Lindsey has joined me to do vocals for one of our songs that we're going to release March 1st. It's In the Woods Somewhere, and I would like you to find that at Introvoid. The official website is a link tree, so it's like, linktree/Introvoid. Sweet Shot of Time is our podcast, and Lindsey has been on that maybe more than anybody else. I don't know. It's possible. Either you or James might be tied for like the most episodes.
James.
I really don't know, because we did a lot of episodes of Dark together. Sweet Shot of Time is the podcast, and that's on Instagram as well. It's Sweet Shot of Time Pod. And I invite you to listen to that. We have a lot of fun on there. And Lindsey's got a lot of stuff too over there. One of my stories. If you're here on Facebook, then you're already on Lindsey Dunn's site, right? They're already on your page.
Well, this is a public event, so I have no idea who it is. It might be somebody of my friend circle. But yes, Facebook, Lindsey Dunn. However, I only accept friend requests of actual friends. So
me too.
But you can find my content at oneofmystories.com. That's the number oneofmystories.com. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky at One of My Stories. Also, my podcast is One of My Stories. So probably we will try, if we can figure out how to download this huge video, we will do that, strip the sound, and release it as a podcast on our respective channels. So look for that. Yes, with like Steve, he mentioned the link tree. It has a lot of stuff. So if you're gonna look for Steve, I do recommend Instagram and go to his link in the bio, because that'll get you to all of his potential channels. I keep telling myself I need to set up a link tree so that I can do the same thing, because now I have Spotify, I have SoundCloud. There's different ways you can find me. So I should probably collect all those somewhere.
I disagree. You have a website. You have the website oneofmystories.com, correct?
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, I'm like, I need to get off Linktree and get that. I need to get a website. And you're saying I need to get on Linktree. We should just trade.
Both. I should do both. But
Linktree is free and easy. It's an app you can download, and you can have yourself set up in 30 minutes, Lindsey. I know you can do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. Well, that's great. Then we've told you how to find us, and what I would like to do, what I will tell, besides we're going to release our song In the Woods Somewhere, we're going to maybe release some other songs too, but we will try to do another live. The next live we would do unless we do, we might do it about something else too, but connected to this material. I also want to do this for the movie Who Am I, which is their second movie, Baron and Yancha's second movie. So let's plan on doing that. Maybe I can figure out StreamYard better, and I'll have even more bells and whistles for everybody, and be able to post it in the group, which is ideally what I wanted to do. Although this hasn't been bad.
Great.
No weirdos signed on.
Except for Harrison.
No creepy people.
Except for Harrison. And that Steve, one person right there. Who's that? You're creepy.
Steve, you can't pick on my friends that you haven't met before.
I know.
I can pick
terrible at doing that. I pick on James's mom, and I've never met her before. So I'm really bad about that. I'm sorry. I'm a fool. I keep telling you I'm a fool, Lindsey. You don't believe me, but I keep proving it more and more every day. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you making me part of this. And thank you once more, Lindsey.
I can do it without you. I don't talk about.
You could.
I couldn't talk about Baron and like Bo and Yancha stuff without you. So
thanks.
Okay, well, good night, everybody. Whether you listen 5 minutes or 50 minutes, we appreciate you being with us here today, and have a good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.